Podcasting from Lethbridge, Alberta, Canada. This is connecting your community, building community through unity. Getting things done takes activism, and Blaine Higgin and Mallory Christiansen have come together to share firsthand community voices, bringing awareness to community issues, watching how other communities handle like problems, and sharing their successes. Connecting your community. Here are your hosts, Blaine Higgin and Mallory Christiansen.
Well, here we are. Mallory.
It's new. You can actually hear our names pronounced correctly.
That's exactly. True. A change. So it's not, was it?
Hagen
and Christensen.
Yeah.
Christensen.
Like,
so, yeah. And a few of the other little
Classic
changes with the
move.
script. So I've got to give actually a shout out to my daughter. My daughter is in film and video at SAIT in Calgary. And she actually, I said, honey, what can you do with this? I says, something's just not, it's not what I really wanted. And I'm sure we both talked about not what we really wanted. And so she's like, yeah, give me a few minutes. And it was at midnight she whipped this thing up. And unfortunately, it just took longer to get it back to us. But it's pretty cool. It's back, and I think it's a lot better.
Thank you to Blaine's amazing daughter and her creativity.
Janessa, thank you very much. So also, the last podcast I was not on, you were on with Mike.
Yep.
And I got to tell you something. What I found really great about that was that whether you guys had different opinions on different topics or whatever it was, you were still able to just sit down and chat about the concerns of the community, although they might have been different as far as what was, ways of getting to results, right?
And I think that's what's lacking in our community per se, is that, just because Mike and I, that's a perfect example, don't agree on everything, we're still able to sit down together. Right? We're not blasting each other on Facebook. We're not calling each other names. And so that is what our community needs, is that authentic, true conversation.
Absolutely.
Right? So it was an honor to host Mike yesterday. And for those of you who don't know, he actually just went through a diagnosis of Bell's palsy.
Yeah.
Right? So just to see his recovery too has just been amazing. It's been amazing.
Unbelievable, being that it was just a week and a half ago or so. And so, it was incredible recovery. And so it's amazing to see that. And he's out there going full tilt again. So,
he sure is.
That's really good.
So just another shout out to Mike Hoffman for coming on yesterday. It was just really beautiful. So we have another guest today, and we have a guest
wondering who was in between us here, right?
This is, Blaine, and I know Janessa, you're right beside me, but I have been so honored to connect with you over the last, 5 months that we've known each other. And our relationship really started as a result of Lethbridge Citizens Alliance rally is when I first actually met you. And I had the honor of introducing you in front of, I don't know how many hundreds of people were there. And I remember hearing your story for the first time, and it broke my heart. Mm-hmm. And I think any parent, any caregiver, kinship, it's going to break your heart. So, Janessa, without further ado, can you please introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about why you're here today on Connecting Your Community?
Sure, for sure. So, I'm Janessa, we connected 5 months ago, and I'm so grateful for that because it's given me an opportunity to meet with people who are like-minded and also who want to stand for change in our community.
Right.
But the reason that I connected with everybody, even the LCA in the beginning, was because our 6-year-old son, Jarom, was pricked by a needle while playing at a community park. And that was really difficult for our family.
Yeah, nobody wants to go through that. And I know that it wasn't the first. And I'm hoping it was the last, but we know that this is still happening throughout our community, which is pretty frustrating. So tell us a little bit more about what you're going through now.
So, the day that we found out, he was actually with a sitter when he got pricked by a needle. And so it wasn't until almost a week later that he told us about it. And he showed me his finger and told me exactly what had happened. And that day we took him to the doctors, and from the doctors we took him to the health unit where he had to have his first round of shots and first blood work taken. So that was a really scary day for him. He was really concerned just what was coming next, who's going to touch me next? What are they going to do to me? We had to hold him down.
Because obviously all of his friends have not been through this, right? And so he can't even talk to them about what is going on.
Exactly. So. He was just like, what is happening? My world just changed. And so we went through all that. And then since then, we've gone through different rounds of blood work. And, you know, the blood work, each time he has to give himself like a pep talk, kind of saying, okay, I'm going to get my blood work done and it's going to be okay. I did this before. I can do this. And, you know, but inevitably we get there and he's all worked up and we have to bring him in the separate room. And, you know, he's gotten to the point where they've actually brought the garbage so that he can just throw up in it because he's so worked up and so worried about it. But
it doesn't matter as far as even prepping up and you as parents trying to talk. It doesn't.
We try to talk to him and we try to, you know, get these feelings out but you know, but it's filtered into other things like anything medical that he goes to now. We try to doctor's or a dentist appointment, and the dentist, like, he was just jumping out of the chair, like, what are you doing to me? What do you know?
Didn't know what is coming.
No, he's like, I don't trust anybody right now,
and rightfully so. So you shared your experience about your son, but what was that like for you as a mother?
As a mother, when he first told me, I was terrified. I was wondering what is going to happen. The thing is, my husband's a local police officer and he deals with lots of people who are using in the community, right? And so he sees what happens to them. He sees the aftermath. And so he's trained on if he gets pricked by a needle, there's protocol for that. Well, our 6-year-old son right here was being pricked by a needle. So it was devastating to us. So I was terrified. I was not sure like what the treatment course was, what we had to do. The doctor that we initially took him to, you know, he first thought that we were going to have to go through this treatment of like, he's got HIV and bring him right down to, you know.
And there's no guarantees.
There's no guarantee.
So it's a process that has to be followed, right?
Right. And when you don't know, and a week had already passed. And so here we were trying to figure out what are we going to do to help him to make sure that he is healthy.
Right. Oh, gee.
So.
That's,
I think it's my worst fear right now as a mother, as an auntie, you know, we have all these different protocols that now we are expected to do as parents. Don't forget to clean the park. Don't forget to look for needles. That shouldn't be our responsibility.
Well, and that was a frustrating part.
There are people paid to do this job. So why is it on us as mothers? Sorry, Blaine, even as a father, why is it on us to make sure that park's clean?
Exactly. You know, why are there even signs at parks? There never used to be signs at parks that said if there was a needle here. That was not an issue that people dealt with. You never heard about it.
Have you heard of any other kids that have been
There have been a few in Lethbridge that have been pricked, some prior to Jarom, and actually there's been one after Jarom. And so, but you know, one is too many, and that shouldn't be happening. And no parent can scour out an entire park. You cannot overturn every rock and leaf and everything to try to make sure.
Yeah, I know the first time we'd heard actually of a child being pricked here, the very first one prior to your son, it was devastating at that time. We thought, this has got to be a one-off, and then of course the occurrences again. It's been
something should have been done after that first child. That is what I will say.
For sure.
So, you know, and we look at, we're going to talk about the resolutions. We're going to talk a little bit about city council. Sorry, I hope that doesn't put you in, you know, an uncomfortable position, Blaine, but we have to talk about this stuff, right? So I guess you were verbal. You came forward. You and your husband, bless both your hearts for being so brave to stand up. You guys came out on social media. You shared your story.
Right.
Now, I know that this is a very controversial topic, but was there anyone from city council? Did our mayor reach out to you to talk to you about this?
Actually, our mayor did not contact me at all. And even when I sent him an email, he didn't contact me.
You sent Mayor Spearman an email
I did send
about
him,
what happened?
and it was a while before he contacted me. The only person that did contact me was actually Blaine. You were the only one that called me to talk to me about it.
And I'd seen it, and when I first heard about it, of course, we were not Facebook friends, and this usually the first thing you do is you hop on there and find out what's... And I saw these mutual friends. I'm like, oh my gosh, of course I know Janessa. I gotta give her a call, find out exactly what is happening. And so, that was, and it was tough too, because it was right at the beginning and I didn't know what to expect and, should I be calling? But thank you for that conversation, because it really gave light to what had happened and gave me a better understanding of what possibly to do because of it.
Right. And so, I was grateful that you called, because I wanted it out there. You know, when something like that happens to your child, for me, I'm a vocal person and I will continue to be an advocate for needles not leaving the site, so that our kids can be in public places, and not only other kids, but other people who are vulnerable,
Yeah, and, just before we break too, is I want to share about how First responders have been pricked by needles. We just had another one that was, in a news release that another first responder was pricked by a needle. We have amazing other professionals within the community who haven't came forward, who've been pricked by needles. I've had a needle thrown at me while just gently encouraging someone to use the supervised consumption site 2 blocks down in Galt Gardens. This isn't okay.
Right.
This isn't okay.
Absolutely.
Right?
Yeah.
Not okay. Yep. And it's frustrating, right? Because we've put our whole story out there.
Absolutely.
And when changes don't happen after you've tried to create change, a positive change for our community, it's really frustrating because you know that other people are going to have the same encounter.
Absolutely.
Right. So with that, let's take a quick break and we will pop back after the break.
This is Connecting Your Community with Blaine Higgin and Mallory Christiansen. We'll be right back after these messages.
Is Copy Express your one-stop print shop? Is the service at Copy Express?
The best thing around, that's what you found, the best thing around.
Blaine Higgin and the team at Copy Express offer the best of the best 2019 copy service. Perfect for your holiday gifting. Get your personalized Christmas calendars printed now and get 50% off your order of 2 or more. Copy Express, locally owned and operated just north of Costco.
At Smith's Audio on 13th Street North, we promise to only sell high-performance electronics. We promise to support mostly Canadian companies like Paradigm, Anthem, NAD, Bryston, and PSB. We keep promises. Smith's Audio, 13th Street North. Electronics simplified.
All right, back again.
Yep.
Wow. So exciting, I guess, that we have sponsors for this, right?
Every time,
you talked about it last time.
I'm always wondering,
and
I'm like, who's going to be our sponsor this week? But
Yeah.
I think it's also so cool to just really promote Smith's Audio as well
And the
as
art
Copy
room,
Express.
the art room in
Yeah.
Smith's
Art room, I
Audio.
saw
I
that.
know there's
Yeah,
a lot
yeah.
of different concerns people had regarding where to get art supplies, etc., because there's been different businesses that have closed down. And so over at Smith's Audio, they actually have a fantastic art room now for those that are looking for
Cool.
supplies.
So cool.
So that's fantastic.
Janessa, before we took off for the break, we talked about, you shared how nothing's really changed.
Right.
So we know in the community of Lethbridge, 2 resolutions have been brought forward. We had one in 2018, we had one in 2019, and both of them did not make it past. And they were both shut down, right? I think the first one was like, we're one off to have another counselor actually agree to keep needles at the supervised consumption site versus allowing them to go into the community. Because is that even supervised consumption if needles are leaving? Let's be real.
Exactly.
But I guess my question is how did that make you feel that both resolutions were passed and turned down by city council to not make change?
That was really, really frustrating. Yeah. Really frustrating because I sat there in the room and I watched and I listened to all the city council, and I listened to our mayor, and there's no other really disgusted knowing that a little child and other children have been pricked by needles, and it was just like dismissed, like, oh, well, who cares? Who cares that it continues to happen? But that's how I felt. I was like, how dare you? How dare you dismiss the fact that my child was pricked by a needle and that the potential is there for anybody else to have the same thing happen? Why would you not make that change?
There's a lot of frustration. I know leading up to the resolution, the first one and the second one, the amount of emails, et cetera, that we received as council was amazing. Now, I always say I respect decisions of council, but I was extremely frustrated by the result of that, as I just thought that in light of some of the different concerns we've had throughout the community, I was a little shocked that that did not pass. To just keep them on site doesn't mean closing down the supervised consumption site, but to not allow these needles from leaving the facility. So there was that frustration, and of course, as any vote with council, we support that, and that's what our job is, to support and go forward. And that's why after the 18th, waited a while, put on 19. And I don't know what, from that point, there's 2 times that it was down. The first time was voted down 5-4. Maybe we can garner some more support for the following year, and it was actually a little less
Right.
So of a 6-3 vote. So, frustrating, and I know that that's very concerning for you, and that's.
It was really disappointing. I mean, even the conversation that went on in that room that day between council, Rob Murashiro, I mean, he threw out there, do you want these people to die? Well, when I heard that comment...
Who is he referring to, these people?
These people using the SCS, using the supervised...
So service users?
Right, service users. Do you want them to die? And to me, keeping the needles at the supervised consumption site would benefit everyone. That would benefit the users actually being supervised while they're using, and ensure that needles aren't going out into the community where they are littered everywhere.
Of course.
I mean, if you can get the needles for free, they're not something that you need to keep special to you, right? And so...
I think you really just actually made me think as well, because a lot of the service users that are accessing the supervised consumption site have FASD, fatal alcohol spectrum disorder. So, you have to educate individuals with mental, cognitions and disabilities such as those. And how do we not know how many of them are actually sharing needles with each other?
We don't.
Right? Because I know many people who have said, well, we just share our needles. We just pass it around. It's the same needle going on and on and on. And there's HIV, there's Hep C. And so many of my friends on the street right now are, in fact, now diagnosed with HIV and Hep C.
Right. And Hep C is huge among the drug
and
users,
I will agree with that needles should stay at the supervised consumption site. But if I may quick, how did that make you feel, Blaine, both times, because you're the one who brought the motion forward? What was that like, having it defeated twice?
It was frustrating, and again, as I just mentioned, going from a 5-4 to a 6-3 on the loss side was quite frustrating. The resolutions were a little different each time, but still, both of them had that part of stopping the needles from leaving the facility. And yeah, it was frustrating, I guess, to say the least. And so from that point forward, what next can we do? And so we've been speaking with our provincial counterparts, and there was a government change just after that time, after that other resolution. And there's some reviews that were done. And I think, Janessa, you had been down, and as were you, Mallory, down to some of these reviews when the panel came down, checking on concerns that people within the community had regarding the supervised consumption site. And so those reviews right now are just being completed and compiled, and they're supposed to be out sooner than later. I was hoping November, now it's December, and trust me, with political things, they take a lot longer than what I would always want. Being a private business owner, like, want something done, and it takes a lot longer. But I do know, in speaking with that ministry, that they are looking through all of this, and they expect to have answers in the near future. So I hope it's something, from what they've heard in those responses during those review panel nights, that it's something that will benefit our community.
I sure hope so. Yeah. Definitely.
So outside that, now as we continue on forward, your son is still doing treatments. Is he finished his last treatment yet?
He has his last shots, I think, scheduled for February.
For February.
Yeah. And so, but it's really interesting, because almost every day he says, do I have blood work today? Do I have any, like, he wants to know right away, is something coming at me, right? Yeah. And so it's definitely, to have something like that weighing on your 6-year-old's mind every day, have a little bit of anxiety towards that each day of their life. It's not right. And
it's traumatizing, and that's going to leave, some healing that he's going to have to do, and that mom's going to have to do. And, if anything, thank goodness that you guys have such a beautiful, tight family where he is so loved by siblings, mom and dad, and the community, right?
Yeah,
we're standing with you. We're standing with you through this, Janessa.
So I hope that, going forward, in your mind, what would you like to see happen throughout the community? What would you like to see done to provide, these reviews are coming back, as I said, these provincial reviews. What are you hoping comes from them?
My main hope regarding the needle debris is that it will absolutely not be able to leave the consumption site anymore. I think that, parks should be free of needles. Alleys should be free of needles. Children's schools should be free of needles. Daycare should be free of needles. And all these places are being littered with needles. And if they can come back and say these needles just absolutely should not leave the site, I think that would be a definite positive step in the right direction.
Okay, but here's the question I have that I know, right, is we know that not all needles are coming from arches, right? They're not all coming from the supervised consumption site. So what about the needles that are being distributed by pharmacies?
Right.
What would you say to that? What could be a solution for, everyone and anyone to walk in, non-diabetics, to be able to go get a needle and use it?
I'm not sure how that works because my husband and I actually did an experiment. We walked into several pharmacies and we asked them, hey,
Interesting.
Can we have a needle?
Oh, okay.
And so we were told, well, why? Why do you need a needle for? Just for personal use is what we told them. We were denied every time.
You're denied?
Denied a needle every time.
From the
Really?
pharmacy?
From the pharmacy.
Okay, because that's
interesting.
shocking to me.
A few of the pharmacies, like
Right.
several. And so,
Okay.
so I don't know particularly which pharmacies they're actually getting them from. There must be one around. And that must not be one of the ones that we
And those are
went to.
provided, obviously, the needles that are at these other pharmacies are provided still through arches.
Through
as
arches,
well.
exactly. And so they're going out
If
into
they
community.
stop them from leaving the facility, obviously that would stop that as well.
It could potentially decrease significant needle
And
debris in our community.
I think so.
I want to hop back to one thing though. We talked about children being pricked throughout the community, and the sad part of that. There's also first responders that we've dealt with. We've read about that as well, and I don't want to push away children being poked or
Absolutely.
any one particular demographic, but it was incredible to hear that's happening with not just there's children within parks, first responders, police, and I've talked to those in EMS and fire that when they go to these overdoses, they're scared that something could happen. They could be pricked as well.
Absolutely.
It's changed so much now exactly how these responders deal with this.
Right.
And I know, Mallory, you spoke a little bit with Mike on the last podcast about the accidental exposure to this. And it can be such a minor amount because that powder, and so you just never know what to expect. Or in a vehicle.
Yeah.
We've seen that in a cab. There's someone who
been
left it in a
left.
cab.
We've had them in cabs, even as frontline workers. We've had them fall out of our individuals' pockets into vehicles. And again, if it's preloaded, you don't even know what you're touching.
is.
You don't even know what's in your vehicle, and you're using it for personal. So your kids are going in that. No way. Enough with that. But the other thing too is we have amazing businessmen, professionals who have also been pricked by simply going to clean out their trailer, and folks have been actually squatting in their trailers using needles.
Yeah.
Right? So we know a lot of people who've been pricked by needles, and nothing's changing.
But
so
yeah, well, I actually spoke to a fast food joint downtown, and they said they have their employees pick up the needles. They fill them, and then they have them come and picked up.
And and
fill
the
the
tough
bins.
part with that is a training too, right?
who's
Because let's
collecting
be
the
honest,
statistics?
we need to, and they need to be trained as far as what to do to pick these up. And I hope, as again, I keep going back to this podcast that you did with Mike, that there's training for them, because we need to worry about those that are picking them up as much as those that are using them. And so, for their safety and making sure that they're using the right, going through the correct protocol to dispose of this needle debris.
You can't get lax in that. You have to follow the protocol. You can't. It's
exactly.
not something that you can just.
Yeah, and lives are at risk, right?
Right.
So the last question I really do want to ask you, like we talked about the hope, we talked about all of that, but what about the criticism? And just short, because we're obviously going to have to wrap this up, is what kind of criticism have you taken since coming forward, Janessa?
The biggest criticism I've faced is we weren't a good enough parent. We didn't provide a safe spot for our kids to be able to play.
At a park.
At a park, yeah. I mean, and I can take that. I take that with a grain of salt, because I know that nobody realistically cannot look through every little, part of a park. And so, but the biggest criticism was that. And, people want to criticize, but at the end of the day, if that was your child or your family member or someone you care about, you might have a different perspective.
Absolutely, you would. It's very different if it's that close to home. And I know you've got other children. You've got
7.
6 other, so 7 total, correct?
7 total, yeah.
Gosh, well, it's an amazing, and I know your work with your children and how much time you spend with them and developing them and stuff. And it's, wow, hats off, 7 children. Could you
Not quite.
No,
I
couldn't imagine. I'm like, no, I'm good.
I have
thanks.
2
no,
and
I got a dog and a
I'm like,
4-year-old. Yeah, no
a
thanks.
dog and a, yes, that's right.
Good enough
So-
for me. You know, just before we wrap this up is there is no justification to children getting pricked by needles. You know, when I first heard about you, I couldn't even watch the stories. I couldn't even watch the films that were done. And there is absolutely zero justification that children, first responders, professionals in the community, even service users, right? There's no justification to this. And we need to find a solution. And thank you for bringing forward solutions.
Yes.
Thank you for using your voice, but enough is enough.
Awesome.
Right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So in closing, so we've got some different podcasts. We're hitting into the Christmas season, and we've got some different podcasts coming up. And you want to know something? We're pretty excited about what this next
I know.
podcast is going to be.
Yeah.
So with that, thank you very much,
Thanks
Janessa.
for tuning in,
Thanks
you
for having
guys.
You've been listening to Connecting Your Community with Blaine Higgin and Mallory Christiansen. Join us next time as we continue to discuss community topics and how all of us together can make a difference. Remember, there is no community without unity.